MetaRunner is a highly acclaimed series that has stolen the heart of millions of fans. And while in their world, video games are everything, in the outside world, we are going to check which episodes from this show really managed to stand out from the rest, and which ones didn't quite make it. That's right, we're ranking every episode from MetaRunner coming of all seasons. That being said, Season 3 will eventually release, but by the time of this video, it has not, so it will eventually be updated. This is also just my personal opinion, so feel free to disagree in the comments. And just because one entry is low on the list, it doesn't mean I think it's bad. It only means I didn't have as good of a time as I had with other entries. With everything being said, let's get running. Number 20. Hard Reset. For the bottom of my ranking, I present to you Hard Reset. During this episode, we get situated into what's been happening in the life of the characters we love and hate. I'm usually not a fan of time skips, but that's not the problem I had with this one. I think the whole atmosphere was supposed to make me depressed, and for that I feel like this episode wasn't enjoyed by me like others were. And to elaborate further, not much happens in this episode. Tari and Belle go to an exhibition match and then get escorted back to Taskor by Lux and his subordinates. Theo gets to talk to Tari, but the conversation is cut short. Lamar and Sophia find Masa and try to encourage him not to give up. And Belle has a conversation with one of this season's new characters, Evelyn. Usually summaries take some time to be written, but this one I just did in a few seconds. I don't think this is any close to being a bad episode, but some episode had to occupy this spot. Number 19. Firewall. So, this was a really hard choice for me. On one hand, I really liked many moments that took part inside this episode, but on the other, there were giant chunks of the video where I felt that something was missing, and that really bothered me. And since I'm trying to review this episode as a whole, I decided to leave it where it is now. The plot itself serves as a build-up to events that would happen later on the season, but to make it simple, Fuel exploits a glitch and escapes his containment room, going into the server. Belle sees that, Tari watches Evelyn take hold of an enemy that detains him, and the MD5 organize a plan to get Masa a new arm. The events I was referring to are Tari getting into the game Evelyn stole, Belle using Theo to gather information about Project Blue, and almost the entirety of episode 3. And as a build-up episode, sure, it works, but just because it fits its purpose doesn't mean I have to love it. Number 18. Bad Split. Tari runs away and gets caught anyway. Really? That's all this episode's got? Well, at least he manages to stay consistent. Of course, sometimes you oughta have an intermediary episode, and in those terms, this is an actual good episode. But it could only get so far considering other episodes just have way more stuff to talk about. Something I liked about this episode that made me rank this one higher than the previous one was the Tari and Belle moment. Belle manages to be very imposing and terrifying without undermining her strong motives that will be revealed later in the season. We also get a catchy line, and I betcha many viewers used it to make fan-made trailers.
You'd be surprised what people would do to be number one.
Number 17. Game Plan. This episode is basically divided into two plot lines. The MD5 plotline and the Testcore plotline. While I thought the MD5 plotline was a complete drag, I absolutely loved the Testcore plotline. To make things clearer, on one hand, you've got really boring exposition, and on the other, you've got some of the most spectacular exposition ever written. So you can see how I was split in this one. Perhaps a bad split.
Oh my god, are you serious? That was the last segment, you can't make that joke now.
Getting back to things, while Tari and Theo get situated on the whole silent demon thing, Belle finds out some shocking stuff, which ends up in Lux discovering exactly what he had to do. We also get chibi Metarunner characters, and it was interesting, to say the least.
Your feelings would set you free, 'cause I do.
Number 16, Transfer Student. I don't really have a problem with this one, but like before, when compared to other episodes, it doesn't make it far. I like to call this a consistent piece of work that didn't quite catch my interest, but I am glad that we started diving into unexplored territory with the dating sim trope, but I think this one doesn't quite capture it for me as the episode from the following week. It was also cool to see Belle and Theo teaming up to execute some weird glitches and beat up a bunch of plant robots. I also liked the ending, which was kind of dark, and you end up discovering I really like dark moments, especially in Metarunner. But none of those moments made me boost this episode in any way. I still think it could have improved in some things, like including some gaming references in the sequences of Starry. Before I go to the next segment, I have to talk about the references in the Theo and Belle segments. They were really fun to track down, and I'm glad Glitch is looking into the most minimal of details us fans can find.
Your feelings would set you free, 'cause I do.
Number 15, No Clue. So we dive into the world of Tempest, but we barely even touch the surface with how much potential this game has. Sure, it's a battle royale, but something really special could be sensed from this one. However, at this point, it's only a sensation. It would take until next week for me to actually witness the grandiosity that is this completely original idea. For this episode, we mainly focus on the glitch Tari has to execute, alongside with some spells we get to know. Meanwhile, even if only for a short time, we get to have a flashback between Belle and Lucinia, finding out more what her personality would look like. And guessing what most of us did, it made for a very sad one too. There was also a scene between Belle and Lux where he manipulates Belle to do his bidding, stores files about the MD5 members, and looks over at a gun he has in his drawer, foreshadowing a method he would have to resort to later on the season. I like how he looks frustrated at it, as if he doesn't want to use it, but we all know he will anyway, and that would end up being his own demise.
Your feelings would set you free, 'cause I do.
Number 14, Out of Bounds. I really spent some time looking into this one, only because this was one of Luke and Kevin's favorites, and I thought there was something in this one I didn't quite see well, so I decided to ignore it and try to discover what I found good about this episode instead of trying to uncover what they found good about the episode. So I got my storytelling glasses and got to business. So it starts from the cliffhanger of the first episode, showing a conversation between Tari, what we thought to be a human player, and Theo, a computer program. Once Tari and Theo get in good terms, he takes her through the level, while Tari discovers her true gaming potential. Now to get to the part that I found interesting. Belle evacuates everyone from the store and argues with a robot because of an old commercial starring her and some random girl we didn't know at the time, which of course only thickens the plot. And I like myself a thick plot. Then we get an EA joke followed by a battle sequence. Finally, we get back to what I believe to be the best part of this episode, the outside of the game, where Lux gathers some scientists and starts experimenting to try and find a way to contact Tari, who he thinks shows a potential way too powerful to be overlooked. After the battle ends, Lux enters the game as what I think to be a player 2 field. The scientists mess with Tari's arm, making her feel an exorbitant amount of pain, and end up triggering the release of both her and Theo, and it ends there. Another cliffhanger. But I have to say, what a nice ending indeed. I wasn't a big fan of the world of Ultra Jump Mania, which I think is what Luke and Kevin really liked about this episode, but I can still appreciate it for what I did like about it.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 13. Nightmare Mode. If you thought that because I didn't like the Ultra Jump Mania scenario, I'd only like the chaotic glitched version a little bit more, you'd be absolutely correct. This one is kind of like the previous segment. There's a part where Tari and Theo go through Ultra Jump Mania, and another where it's mostly Lux scheming. I remain liking the Lux part, but the Ultra Jump Mania one actually improved in my opinion. Maybe because I think the game's more fun when somehow broken, or it could also be the creative design of the Evelyn boss, but I cannot lie, I enjoyed it way more than the last one. Now to talk about the other part of the episode, I really enjoyed starting to see how Lux would act if he got desperate, what kind of crazy plans he would have to come up with to win the situation. By the way, I also like to see the robots being reused in this episode. Unlike some people who would say it's kind of lazy, I'm actually a fan of that kind of stuff. I love when everything comes a full circle. Also, rip this guy, I can't imagine a worse fate for a character ever.
That's called foreshadowing.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 12. Wrong Warp. For me, this was a really strong start. This will forever be a classic to me, and I have no real good reason for it. I just loved pretty much everything about this episode. We started it all with a line from Sheridan, which will probably be the main antagonist of Season 3 and following seasons if so planned, and I enjoy that very much. We get some SMG4 love on billboards and monitors, some funny gags and references, and the introduction to Belle and Lux. This was the introduction to the show that I can gladly say made many fans want to keep going and watching, and for building up this incredible and interesting world alone, we have to give it at least some praise. But to elaborate further, this episode gives a clear look at the characters of Tari, Belle, and Lux, what drives them, their values, and personalities. And the fact they're so diverse only makes it the more interesting for the viewer. We also have to talk about how Tari going into the game was an unexpected surprise that would be defining for the remaining of the series. And since this is the first time we see this very important ability, it makes for a unique experience that could only be seen in this particular episode.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 11. Sequence Break. This has one of the most iconic car chases I've ever seen. While the only thing that happens in this episode is technically the car chase, since it's that good, the episode achieves to be an awesome and thrilling experience. All the characters fit perfectly in this episode and manage to bring out a spark that completely incinerates the scene. And I mean that in a good way. Of course, why would I mean it in any other way? Please don't arrest me. Even though Lamar barely had time to be introduced in the episode of the previous week, now he gets his true chance to come into the spotlight and really shine. Not only that, but this episode also helps to build the world of Silica City and the people that inhabit it. And I'm not surprised Lux got impressed by Tori when he saw her get over that barrier. That had to be the best moment of the episode and one of the most exciting of the whole season, and maybe the series too. This was truly a fascinating experience.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 10. Friendly Fire. The plan made by the MD5 is being executed while Tari continues her match of Hidden Heroes, trying to escape from the enemy players and Evelyn. It was fun to watch Sophia break it down to Lux, and the fight between Tori and Evelyn in-game was very well executed, and makes me sometimes wonder how video game combat has improved in this universe. We also got some scenes with Belle and Theo, but I wasn't the biggest fan of this part other than Lucinia showing up to help. The way Mazda sacrificed himself to save Lamar made sense for his character, but wasn't something I was particularly expecting. We also get to see how both sides managed to be very clever, with Sophia using the show match to prevent Lux from leaving, and Lux secretly making a signal to Evelyn so she can end Sophia's plan for him. And we have to agree, both of them are extremely cocky and sassy to each other. Can't you wait for the victory to come before you make those arrogant remarks? Like, seriously. But I guess that does fit with their characters, so I'll get off their back.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 9. One Shot. We finally get to see how an actual match would be in the game of Tempest. And boy was it fun. All the different spells and the scenery makes for a battle royale I actually want to play. We get this chaotic feel since spells and players are coming from all sides non-stop, and I really like that. We get to take a look at way more spells than we did last time, and that's great because they're all really interesting. You've got this finger bang one, a shadowy arm, an ice spell, and many more. The main enemy group was also very cool and somewhat terrifying, making for a great and present threat. Once all the chaos stops and our heroes get teleported to a random point in the mountain, we get to have conflict inside the group, which is only stopped by more enemy players attacking them. This prompts Tori to fall off and get badly damaged by the group I talked to beforehand, only to get saved by her compatriots with newly acquired spells, which they probably got from the players who attacked them on the mountain. This was a very cool episode filled to the brim with action scenes that are sure to keep you entertained. And Tori saw Lucinia for the first time, but that does not mean she wouldn't see her again.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 8. Hack and Slash. I find Hack and Slash to be more entertaining than Friendly Fire, simply because it contains less gameplay and more scenes taking part in real life. Don't get me wrong, sometimes I do prefer to get more scenes inside the games, but when comparing Hidden Heroes to the plan MD5 is trying to execute and Lux introducing the players and the game, I prefer the last two. Not because Hidden Heroes is bad or anything, I just find every other scene in the episode to be more interesting. This includes stuff I've talked about already, and some scenes with Coconut Boy and Angry Shouty Lady. I also like that even though Glitch made everything possible for you to despise Evelyn, they still wanted to give her a backstory that explains her motives and overall personality. I really do appreciate that extra effort put into characters to make them less one-dimensional. To finish it off, this one has more funny moments than Friendly Fire, that being the funny voices Lamar and Mazda make to avoid being caught. This all makes for a good episode.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 7. Aimbot. We get to properly meet Masa for the first time as we watch he test Tari's gaming abilities to see if she's fit for MD5. Beetle Blaze surprisingly got me pretty invested, even though I'm not at all into its gaming genre. I don't know why, but like Tempest, the game just seems fun to watch. Masa is also one of my favorite characters, so the episode where he gets properly introduced was bound to get a high spot on the list. The episode starts with a flashback of a previous moment, but in a different perspective, explaining exactly how Lamar managed to find Tari and Theo just as they were being captured. We also get to know what is the MD5 and what the members of it stand for. Sophia is also a fun character I'm pretty sure no one has the guts to really hate, and Lamar continues to be an interesting side character who interacts well with everyone around him. Meanwhile, Belle sets up some amazing exposition to be revealed in game plan, but I really wish it could have been revealed in this episode. If it so happened, this definitely would have made it into the top 5.
Do you feel wings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 6. Heart to Heart. The reunion of the MD5 with the addition of one new member, Belle Fontier. It was nice to finally see Tari reunite with her friends, even if virtually. We get great interactions and dialogue, but it does not stop there. Once Belle gets to watch the video she downloaded to her arm, she discovers that Lux knew what happened to Lucinia from the beginning and had been using her to get what he wanted for all this time. This brings some needed conflict that results in Belle interrupting the MD5's little reunion to apologize to Tari and tell her she wants to join in whatever plan they're making. The struggle in Masa towards accepting Belle back into the group was engaging, although expected, since she did not believe him at first and let him down multiple times. But after some convincing coming from Tari, Masa decides to forgive Belle and take her back in. The only major bad thing I can say about this episode is how the start felt like it belonged in Transfer Student, but that's just something I think. Going back to the video, after rewatching it quite a few times, I adored the way they addressed Lux. While he's still on the wrong for hiding all of this, you can clearly see he was not indifferent towards what happened to Lucinia, and those little details make for a very intriguing ride.
Do you feel wings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 5. Unreal Engines. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not that big a fan of cars, but I somehow found this episode to be very entertaining and well made. That has to do mainly with the introduction of Marco, which is a personal favorite of mine. This leader of the underdogs just manages to connect with me on a personal level that many other characters don't. He also has a great personality, seems to be an alright person and a decent professional. His grudge with Masa makes perfect sense since he kind of was Lux's golden boy, as much as Masa tries denying it. The look of the character is also a plus. He looks completely badass. It's like if you dirtied up Jacksepticeye and put him in a Cyberpunk 2077 scenario. Turbo Crash 9 is not a game I would personally get around to playing, but it does seem like people can take some joy from it. This episode is mainly focused on the MD5, but Tari also gets some screen time, which precedes the build-up from the last episode while still being the build-up to the next one. This would also be the first time we learned of this arm manipulating tech that would later be crucial to the finale of the season. It also comes to show that, as Marco likes to imply, Masa and Lux are not that different from each other.
Do you feel wings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 4. The Run. I decided to put The Run as the best Tempest episode since it contains the most emotional moments while still having all the elements from the game into it. We start from where the last episode left off, with Masa, Lamar and Theo all coming to Tori's rescue, which results in an ensuing battle that would take the in-game lives of everyone in Belle's team, except herself, of course, and Theo. The moment of Theo's death really emphasizes the motherly relationship between Tori and Theo and comes to show how important it will be for both the characters and the series. Talking about Theo's death, I like how even the guy who killed him is given some personality even without saying a word in the entire episode. Now moving to another important topic I need to address, the climatic moment between Masa and Belle was definitely the standout of this episode, and the main reason I even ranked it this high on the list. And I found it surprising how rewatching this episode only made me appreciate it more, since most of my good memories with Metarunner come from the season finale, but I could not let this one pass by as your average episode, because it really is something special. The dialogue is so good and the combat is fascinating to watch. It's painful to watch these friends fight since you know none of them are in the wrong. This was a great preview of what the Glitch team had stored for that season's finale.
Do your feelings would set you free, 'cause I do.
Number 3. Soft Lock. So much stuff happens here, and I love it. We end Evelyn one first time. Masa gives Lux a black eye, Lux captures him and Belle, confronts them, they have a flashback, and the others plan what they will do now. I am a fan of the little details in this episode because this is one filled with them. Seeing the conclusion to the fight between Tori and Evelyn in Hidden Heroes was somehow more fun for me than all other fight scenes that occurred in this game. You've got the scene where Masa bumps into Sheridan, who we didn't know was Sheridan at the time, which only makes it the more interesting for my brain. My very big brain. Lux's explanation is very engaging. It makes me think what he means by protecting the company, by there being bigger things in play that Masa and Belle wouldn't understand. And when you go to the season finale, you can start to understand the meaning behind many things he says. The apology from Belle later was also a good piece of dialogue, pretty necessary for her character to move forward. The flashback was pleasant, while still being quite sad, considering where those characters are in the present moment. It also helps for us to better know the character of Lucinia, because even though we have had some scenes with her before, none were as major as this one. And then for my favorite part, look at Lux here right after Masa blames him for the death of Lucinia. You can see that Sai was not at all annoyance, but rather guilt. This helps to prove Lux is not as completely evil as some make him to be, and I think that should be considered a pro in all of the best ways possible, because in real life, people aren't perfect. This shows a new side to the character of Lux, indicating that nothing is as black and white as it seems.
Do your feelings would set you free, 'cause I do.
Number 2. Shut Down. Before we got a moment between Masa and Belle, now we get a moment between Tori and Belle. The execution of the glitch is done, even though alongside some obstacles in the form of Belle and her meteors. And then we get a pretty dark scene showing Tori re-encountering Lucinia, but this time she turns around and her current state appears. Next, we move to one of the most intense and recognizable moments in the whole series. This moment has the exact right tension needed, the stakes are up high, and Lux is fucking terrifying. He shooting Masa's arm off was the cherry on top of the cake to make this already tense situation into an even darker one. But if that wasn't enough, Lux crushes Theo's cartridge, making most of us think he killed him for a moment. That wasn't exactly the case, but it did not make it any less dark than it already is. I like endings like these where the villain initially wins, since they just feel way more bound to reality. I also did not expect that Tori would actually make that type of sacrifice for her newfound friends, but that accords back to her nice personality. All the emotions found here are all realistic, fit their respective characters, and are very empathizing to watch. The revelation made by Belle, which results in the feeling of betrayal coming from Sophia and Masa, or Belle's infuriation caused by Lux accepting to take her in, are all markable moments that capture emotions that remain really strong to this day. That is why this episode is extremely gifted.
Do your feelings would set you free? 'Cause I do.
Number 1. Fatal Error. And now coming to the end of the list, we arrive at what I think to be the absolute best and most climatic episode in the whole series until the point I posted this video. We start off with Tori beating the Evelyn boss with the help of Theo and completing the game. This is personally, in my opinion, the least interesting part of the episode, but I don't have any real problems with it. Then, after Theo gets sent into the real world, Tori meets with Lucinia a third time, but this time she actually gets to talk to her. Lucinia would then reveal off-screen to Tori the exact details of her origins and Project Blue. Then we get to the main and most important part of the episode, the encounter with Lux. This has to be the most well-crafted scene in the entirety of Maze Runner. If you thought stakes were high before, now they managed to get 10 times as big. Seeing Lux actually get desperate for once showed his true colors to the audience, and it was truly an amazing sight to watch. Just as you think Lux is somehow going to escape unscathed, tables turn really fast and now Lux is completely exposed to the world. Seeing as he's got nothing more to lose, Lux reveals the truth about Lucinia's disappearance. He tells the MD5 Lucinia was alive but unconscious, and the whole time he and a medical team had been trying to save Lucinia and give back the stolen pieces of her consciousness. Lux also leaks that Tori was the AI being developed by Sheridan, and that some of Lucinia's consciousness was merged into her. Belle, still irritated, scolds Lux, telling him that Lucinia's death was his own fault, and that instead of being responsible, he did everything in his power to try and hide it from them and the world because he was too ashamed to admit he failed. At the end, Masa has a character conflict in which he has to decide if he trusts the justice system enough to keep Lux behind bars, considering murder to prevent Lux from worming his way out of it. It was really interesting to see how both Lux and Masa could get desperate in order to try and do what they think is right. In the end, Masa puts the gun down and tries walking away. However, his arm started acting on its own and pointed the gun in the direction of Lux. Masa tries getting back the control of his arm, but nothing could be done. As Lux realized what was happening in the last moments of his life, the only thing left for him to do was to congratulate an old ally in doing what no one else had ever done before, taking over the place of his empire. Masa's arm shoots Lux in the head, and Lux falls dead on the ground. Masa looks in shock as his old mentor laid on the ground, surrounded by blood. This was a chilling and phenomenal scene, coming to show that as much as Masa wanted Lux to pay, he still had some attachment left for his old boss, the man who helped him achieve the abilities he had today. As Masa remains standing in shock on the crime scene, accompanied by Belle, Tori, Lamar, and Sophia escape to the welcoming arms of Marco, which really helps tie everything together in a nice bow. I almost had a struggle deciding between this episode and the one in the last segment, but then there was the post-credits scene.
That moronic, stuttering, blue-haired, walking fluke! She thinks she's better than me. She's not better. She's just a freak. Why, if I had those abilities...
Yes, Daddy, I'm coming home. I'm in the car already.
Oh, I'm sorry, my girl. I'm not your father. But I am a man that can do many, many things for you. See, I couldn't help but overhear your little, speech, and I'd like to help. How serious were you when you said you wanted Tari's abilities?
Who are you? How did you get this number?
Oh, getting into Metarunner Arms is easy if you know what you're doing. As for who I am, well, I've gone by a few names and aliases recently. But for you, my dear, you can call me Sheridan.
When I saw that incredible revelation that Sheridan was always watching and scheming to achieve power, I just had to rank this episode as the masterpiece that it is. This will be forever remembered by me as one of the best season finales of all animated and non-animated series. And that was the whole ranking. Did you like it? Did you agree with it? Leave your own opinions down in the comments below. It has been a joy rewatching all of these episodes again, and making this list was extremely rewarding. This video took way longer to make due to an unexpected change of mic, so I'm sorry in case I kept you waiting. If you like what I'm doing, try supporting the channel by subscribing, liking the video, or whatever other thing YouTubers tell their audience to do at the end of the video. Thank you for watching, it was a pleasure having you here. Bye bye.
Where am I? What's happening?